Sorry if I wasn't clear on that, but yeah, no worries
Cool.
for sure.
I think we're gonna work.
I
I
think those
like it. Is
shades
there
work.
enough light? Thank you. These are cool. I want to use them in the video. We're filming a video this weekend, so I'm excited for
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be like a live production video.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we're gonna do like a small set, and then we're gonna have in the production studio. It's like a warehouse studio. They're gonna build the stage. And we're gonna do like a short set, and then do like a multicam and an audio recording, so we can release all that instead of just a live stream or whatever.
Where are
So
you shooting it at?
Nexus in Youngstown.
Nexus. I don't know if
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard of
Nexus.
Nexus. Is it just like a? Oh, you
They
said it's
do,
like a warehouse space. Okay.
well, they do. There's a studio they have in Warren, and that's where I mastered my album, actually. At
Yeah.
Nexus Sound Studio in Warren, and they have one in Youngstown, and that's where they do a lot of their video work. And they have like a warehouse space that they can do whatever in. It's like a big film production spot, you know.
Is that it?
Nexus, I think it might be. Yeah, that's them. Yeah. That's a cool studio. That's where I do most of my work because my one buddy I went to high school with works out of there. A couple people that I know have worked out of there, so it's cool. And they hustle, so.
So that's where you do most of your stuff?
I mean, that's where I do my mastering, and that's where I'm going to do my video production work out of this time around. So I do this studio that I'm doing the interview out of now is the Inferno production studio. So this is where I do all of the recording and the live broadcasting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I can mix down here, but then I take it into a mastering studio and get a second opinion. And then
Yeah,
I'll
for
probably,
sure.
like I said, do the filming. Just so that we have, something more professional. It's a lot better, I think, to have a second ear on things also.
Yeah, with mastering especially, like mixing and mastering.
Yeah,
Like
that was
subjective.
tough. It sort of is. And there's also some certain standards, like stuff you can't hear on cheaper speakers that you'll hear on more expensive setups,
Right.
that you get rid of that makes it, I mean, stuff like that helps. So it's a learning process.
Yeah. So is this like a home studio you're at right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, this is the home studio right now. It's like the mothership spot. And this is where I have all my interfaces and all my gear. And I just don't like having to pay hourly to go into a studio.
Right.
Doing the writing process and the recording process and trying to get guitar solos and vocal takes because it's just too, you never know when, you know what I mean? It might be in the
I do,
afternoon.
yeah. Why would anyone, I don't know why anyone would do it that way anymore. Like it seems like the home recording stuff is just so similar to going into a studio. And then, you really are paying to like put the cake in the oven, like when it's all said and done.
It depends. I would like to do a like one in the studio, just now that we have stuff down. That's why I'm doing this thing now, just because I don't know. The space is, but like you said, if you're comfortable in your space, it's not bad doing it there.
Yeah.
Doing it in your home space. I considered that, what I was going to do for the next project, if I was going to go into a studio to record it, or if I was going to, but you have to practice more. If you're going to go into a studio and pay for time, you have to know your songs a little bit better. That's, and
They
it's
just kind of have to be finished, versus like if you do it at home, you gotta let them reshape themselves as you're recording them.
yeah, you can come up with your ideas. You can try things out, or if you don't like it, you can redo it. And that's pretty cool. That's why we're doing the live thing, though, so that I can get, the feel, because I'll bring it back to the home studio and we'll mix it up here, and then, we'll have it mastered and edited and whatnot with the video, and it'll all come out as one sort of package. So that'll be fun. I think that's the best way to do it is, get a couple different chains of people helping.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm just gonna throw out some, and like this doesn't have to be an interview. I kind of just want to talk and see where it leads, I guess. But I did want to kind of just get bio info to kind of start with. So like, have you been playing under John Dante and the Inferno for upwards of 10 years, or have you just kind of been putting music out under just your own
No,
name?
I
'Cause
think
I know you started like at the beginning of last decade.
I think the first release for John Dante and the Inferno is '08.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I think that is like our first EP album, Opelia and Sensimilia. And it was like, it's a cool album. It's got like a sort of mixture of stuff. Um, I was listening to a lot of like, Ween and Les Claypool and Sublime, jam rock and stuff like that. So that was our first outing as a band, I think, where it was labeled that. Before that, I think we did another 3 or 4 song EP that was like all blues covers, that had the same
Okay.
name. And we were playing like bar gigs. And I think we were trying to come up with different names that were sort of 1950s sounding so we could book
Yeah, yeah.
it, that sounded sort of like because we were, sounded like we were more like a blues band. We weren't really writing music at the time, and we weren't really covering a lot of different bands at the time. It was easier to do a blues set for the most part, or like bands that were blues influenced. So I think that's sort of where it came from. So that, and I just haven't really seen the need to change it because band members change a lot, and it would be a lot of different band names at this point.
Right.
So yeah, I've sort of just kept it trucking since then.
Well, like a lot of people have been doing projects that are basically the same thing for a decade or more, but they just change the name up every 3 years to like
Right.
keep people not even interested, just to like make it seem like it's something new. And in a lot of ways, it is, but sometimes it's just kind of like a continuation of the same thing, but just with like a new name. So I think it's interesting that you've been at it, for 12 years using that name. And okay, so and you're from Warren,
Mm-hmm.
and is that how that's near Cleveland, right? Or like near
It's
Canton?
about an hour from Cleveland and about an hour from Canton. So it's sort of
Okay.
the northeastern part of the state. It's about it's a couple hours from everything. It's about like a half hour from Youngstown.
Is that where Dave Grohl's from?
There is Dave Grohl Alley in Warren. Yeah, that's the story. Is that
He's probably from there. I don't think they would just randomly name it Dave Grohl Alley.
they had an event. We played at one of those events where they opened up the alleyway, right? It was a Dave Grohl Alley festival. And if you look it up on YouTube, I think the song is Monster in My Room, and it's in Warren. And someone put the video up of us playing there. And he actually came out that weekend and he hung out and everyone gave him demos. I tried to meet him, but it was like really
I'm sure you
exciting.
love that.
And because I was like, oh, I played like on Thursday. Am I gonna get to meet Dave? And I guess his grandparents lived in Warren, so it was his summertime. He'd come and stay with his grandparents during the
Yeah, yeah.
summer. So yeah, they do have Dave Grohl Alley, and we played a couple things. We used to do some music festivals back there. There's like a parking garage and a parking lot, and then there's some businesses there. My one buddy that I used to do shows with opened a business there, and it's, right in downtown Warren. There's Dave Grohl Alley, and there's a brewery back there that we played at. So yeah, that is true. That's the spot. That's probably what would put it on the map the most if you were coming through.
Yeah, I kind of just realized that right before we started this call, because I know you said Warren, and then I realized like for some reason that it had stuck in my mind. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. What kind of town is it? I mean, is it pretty rural, and is it like one of those like two block towns or whatever?
Well, no. See, the thing about Warren is it's big. It used to be a lot bigger before. Like what a lot of people don't know is like Warner Brothers and a lot of the entertainment, originally actually started in this area, and that's why you have the like some of the theaters in Youngstown. Because I used to do stage work over at Cavelli Center, and then there's the theater down the street that used to be an old Warner Brothers movie theater, and it was actually Warren was like a cultural hub of 60s and the 50s, in the 50s and
Mm-hmm.
60s. So then we had the there's the cars, there was like Lordstown, which was the General Motors plant, and then you had Youngstown, which had all like the Youngstown Steel. So really Warren Youngstown was like more of a booming cultural area, and then it's not small and rural. There's a lot of old bars and there's a lot of old theaters, and I think a lot of the theater culture actually started in these areas, but it's sort of faded for the most part. So people are trying to bring it back. We do have the amphitheater concerts, and there's local bars, that do open mic and have bands, almost every weekend. So there's still a good music scene here, and it's a larger area. You have downtown Warren that has Dave Grohl Alley, and that's got all the old architecture, and there's a new theater that opened up in downtown Warren, which I would love to play at, but they hold like 500 people and they're not open, all the way right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to get something together there, but that's an old theater that they just remodeled, and that's all downtown. And then you have your sort of outlying smaller communities that are part of like the township, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I had no idea. There's
Yeah.
so many towns in Ohio that you just kind of pass through if you've ever like, I don't know, had reason to go somewhere where you didn't need to take 75 or 23 or
Right.
71 or whatever. There's just so many small towns, and there's actually a lot of places to gig. And I don't know, maybe that's a segue into the next thing I kind of want to talk about. Like you're, I mean, it seems like you're definitely part of the more like jam scene. I don't really think it's like necessarily jam music. Like there's more to it, but and it's definitely seems to be like, at least on my radar, coming from like indie rock world, it seems like it's pretty burgeoning in the past couple of years. It seems like there's a lot of places to play that aren't like major cities in Ohio. So I'm curious, like where you guys play in general, like if you have any spots that aren't big cities, and like how, and I just kind of want to know how much you're gigging too, because last time we talked you said you were gigging quite a bit, which is like that I think if I told anybody that, it'd blow their mind right now, because like most bands I talk to, when is it going to open up? And I'm like, some people it never really closed down, like they're just trying to do it carefully, or some people like aren't trying to do it carefully. And just whatever.
There's quite a few spots. The one that we've been playing at, I think the most in the past couple of years, is down in Bellevue. It was a place called Coyote Grove.
Right.
Shows all the time, and that's
outdoors.
Yeah, that's an outdoor venue. All of what we did this summer was outdoor venues. All of the indoor venues, some of the bars, were able to do things because they had limits, that they were able to work within. So most of the stuff, all the stuff we did was outdoors. The one place we were playing in Kent, which was our spot, it was called the Dome in Kent.
Oh, and right.
On the edge, it was right off the highway, so it was kind of on the edge of town, and it was a giant dome. It was like a geometric dome, and it was cool. I liked it. They had like a green room and a balcony upstairs, and some pool tables, and they had lights and sound, which was cool. And it was sort of the edge of town, so you could make some noise. It wasn't real, it was sort of out of the way. But it had been a bunch of different things. I think it was a strip club at one point, and I think it was like
probably called the Dome no matter what it was.
So, everyone be like, you're playing at the Dome. Like, the sound is good though. It sounded great because it was a giant dome. I thought it was one of the better sounding venues, and it was cool because, people left you alone. You just get off the highway and you'd hang out. You can go get a burger afterwards or whatever, but it was out of the way. And we were supposed to do something there on Halloween, but I think I heard that it's going to turn into a restaurant and someone wants to like redo it, so that's not going to be, so that was one of the spots we were playing. We did our album release there for Lies, and we did another show there, and I was going to try and do Halloween there just because I thought it was a cool setup, and I was like, we got to get people in here. But that place turned into a restaurant. So all the outdoor gigs are been really where it's been at, and that's, we were down at Coyote Grove in Bellevue, Ohio, and that place is really cool. They have us back for a lot of big festivals, and we were up in Elyria a couple times. The Ambets let us camp out and play some music at their spot, and there was a couple different backyard parties. One was called like Dirt Farm, which people were hanging out at, and that one was, a lot of them were private events to make them work because you couldn't actually have large groups of people, so it would be, smaller groups of people. And then the events where they did sell tickets, I was surprised, it was one of the only places I went to where people were checking temperatures or whatever, on the way in, with give you the temperature check.
Gun, yeah,
and so they kept an eye on things, and I, heard, some people wanted to wear masks more than others, but in the open air, You know what I mean? It wasn't, once you got into the festival and then everyone sort of had a community. And like I said, no one, had any issues with being sick all summer. And we saw a lot of the
Yeah.
same people that were sort of comfortable with coming out, and seeing the music. And we had a lot of fun with it this summer. It was really cool.
How
I
many
should have written
people
down.
were coming to these events?
It's hard to say. I don't know if I ever got like final number counts on them. And a lot of them,
Because it's
since they,
people, it's like hours long and people coming and going kind of thing.
well, it's like sometimes it'll be like 3 or 4 days long. It'll, start, people
Sure,
will come
sure.
in on day, and then you'll have bands all day Friday or Friday night and all day Saturday. And then, some people play music on Sunday and then leave. So that's why it's hard to always get an exact number, because a lot of these local spots, people will come in and they'll be able to watch music and leave, in their own groups, because they're sort of localized. And I think that's what made it possible at a lot of these venues, because they weren't real huge festivals where you had like hundreds of people set up to camp, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would come out, for music, and they'd hang out late night or they'd hang out overnight, and then be able to go back, because they were all sort of local spots. But there'd definitely be, a couple hundred people. I'm thinking. I don't know what they were able to cap them at. It
Yeah.
depends on what time of the year it was, but we would always, do it up and get as many, as we were allowed to, I think. And that was always up
It's,
to the venue and like the different, because there's a couple counties, like we were supposed to do a street fair in Cincinnati, and they definitely didn't let that happen.
yeah,
And we
right.
do a couple other ones that I was surprised people would set them up, and it was the same thing. They would, make it a private event so they could have their limit, based on their space or whatever, because campgrounds were allowed to open. So if you were a campground, you were allowed to have so many campers. And then if you had a socially distant stage, you were allowed to have the bands playing, so a lot of places were allowed to have a certain number of people. And some other places, the health department or the county just didn't want to have it happen, so we had maybe 2 or 3 cancellations, which was definitely a bummer, but the other half a dozen of them went off pretty good. And it seems,
I don't even like remember the last time that, you know, well, I shouldn't say it that way, but like it's just, it's hard enough getting a couple hundred people out to something anyways.
right.
I just, nobody I know even like knows that this scene is going on in general. And it's just interesting because I know people who don't want to play, and then I know people who want to try to play and just see what it feels like. And it's just, I could see a lot of people starting to just like play in your scene who wouldn't normally. And it's interesting, like I don't necessarily think that, like, when I hear your stuff, it doesn't immediately jump out into like a jam scene. I mean, I get why you guys playing it. Like I can see that, but it also seems like it's just kind of more ahead like straight rock stuff. Or I don't know, maybe the most recent album is like, that's the one I've really dug into. So maybe it's
Yeah,
more
the
like
most
that.
recent album's the most. I think everyone asks what they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think it's like proto punk, and people are like,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
word. And look, that's real. It's like T-Rex and like early Bowie, and early punk rock. Lou Reed, Velvet Underground,
Right.
like really heavy Beatles songs, things that sort of had that, T-Rex, like I said, that really vibey late 60s heavy garage punk sound. So that's what I went into with the latest album. The one I did before it, which I did also in this home studio, and they were released a year apart. It's Truth and Lies. So I kind of consider it like a double album
Right.
that I got as fast as possible, and Lies was really like my acoustic album. Like those were all the acoustic songs that I wanted to put, and I didn't really get the time or the vibe right, and it's definitely a lot of fun. It's hard to characterize the band because a lot of times we'll do these shows and people will be like, oh, you're not the same style, because it doesn't have as heavy of like a reggae or a ska influence.
The reggae thing is, yeah, that's what I think of when I think of jam bands. From
Right.
the stuff that I've been to, like Coyote Grove, for example, I feel like it's a lot of really heavily reggae influenced stuff. I'm super picky about anything reggae influence too, because like there's a difference between Lee Scratch Perry and white boy reggae, and it's like, you know.
always got people got mad because I coined the term Rust Belt reggae for the area where you have, because it seems
Yeah,
like there is a big boom, and it's because Sublime was the biggest band ever when we were all in summer
it's the
camp or
same
whatever.
reason that
Like,
kids I know are everything they do sounds like Blink 182 and they can't help it. I feel like, dude, I know exactly what you mean. It's either Sublime or Blink 182. Like
right,
you're
and
gonna
there's
have
a
you're
big,
gonna have that influence.
there's a big scene with it too, because there was like, the Dirty Heads and Slightly Stupid, and there's like a vibe with it, and I think that a lot of jam bands like blues, and that's sort of what got us into the vibe, is the sort of more Grateful Dead, like Americana blues rock thing, and that, and like the Jimi Hendrix thing, because some people like to
Yeah,
just, yeah, like they like to just come up to the stage and yell and the guitar's loud,
do
because
this thing.
a
Yeah.
lot of that, like, yeah,
Oh
and
man.
it's fun, and not
Yeah.
everyone. Some people like to come up, and I'll see a lot of bands will have at least one acoustic guitar, and it'll be like a Crosby, Stills, and Nash vibe, and I love it. It sounds great, and I'm like, this is really cool. It's beautiful and it's fun to watch. And then sometimes we'll play, and you can tell it'll like, the heavy metal or the
Yeah.
psycho will straggle up from the back and be like, that was great. And it's always people that you haven't met, ever before, ever, that you sort of draw out, from the woods somewhere. And they're like, that was awesome. Let me get 3 t-shirts and I want to hear your music again. And they'll come back, people will recognize it. So it's definitely, I guess, the expression, the heavy metal community, we can do that in too.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say you should be pretty easily able to like go into something more punk and yeah, and you've got a lot of stuff on YouTube like live videos, and I do see the metal influence come across live in your come across on the live stuff I've seen on YouTube. So I can imagine you could play for like punk or metal crowds and
Oh
probably
yeah.
do just as well.
That's what's fun. We do usually do a metal show every year. It's called Freestock, and we did it every year for like 4 or 5 years. And we ended up doing something else in Cleveland. We got double booked, which was, even though most bands aren't booking, I actually got double booked on a Saturday this year, and I felt really bad because I had to choose what gig I was going to
Yeah.
do. And the show we did was a lot of fun. We released a video from our song Bad Decision. It was a really cool looking stage and a really great sound system. And that was our latest YouTube video. It's called Noise Fest in Elyria. And that was more the jam rock scene from the Cleveland area. And they're a little bit more indie rock in Cleveland. It's a little of a harder edge when we play there. I think when we go out to like Toledo and Elyria and places that are farther away, Cincinnati, Columbus, you see more like the jam band element. But I
Where have
think
you played in Toledo? You know, I'm from Toledo. I think I said that last time we
it was
talked. But
called,
where have you played
I
good?
think it was called, it was on Poe Road. It was called The Sanctuary.
Oh, you mentioned that the last time. Yeah.
It was a really cool spot. There was a bean field, and they had a bean field, and I remember a bunch of my buddies were parked over there on the back end of it. And then there was, no, that was a different spot. Poe Road was the one with the cornfield. That's what I remember. There was a cornfield right next to the venue, and they had a really nice stage, and it was cool because I don't know, it was sort of sectioned off, you know what I mean? And that one was a private event that they had. It was a wedding party, and a couple was getting married, so they were able to have a small number of guests and a couple of bands, on the property. So that one was a lot of fun.
I feel
I
like
went.
that's where the future of like indie music is headed the next decade or so, because it seems like a lot of the stuff is just not going to come back. A lot of the bands before this aren't going to come back, at least in the same way, because there's like a lot of indie bands trying to do all this stuff, trying to do house shows. I don't think people are going to want to do house shows. It just seems like off the beaten path kind of stuff. And what's interesting about what you guys are doing, I feel like you've been doing off the beaten, at least from my perspective, off the beaten path stuff for 12 years. So it seems like you're the perfect band to be able to like survive this whole thing. I'm really interested to see what you guys do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, was talking to a friend of mine about that, because I'm like, well, how do you think shows are going to look? There's probably going to be a lot of bands that have been waiting to play. They've been really locked down. And I know a lot of musicians that have been locked down, and they're like, they want everyone to not play and sort of save up, for the industry. And I don't know if I was talking to him. I was like, I don't know if all these bands are going to get back together in the same capacity or if people
Right.
drift in the next year or two. And I just read an article. I don't know if it was like Metal Injection or Billboard or something that said Monster Magnet canceled their spring tour, and they're like, we're not sure 2021 is going to come together at all for the music industry. You know, that people are still, like you said, with house shows. I think people are still even up in the air about going to large gatherings. You know, like, you know, big 1,000, 1,500 people concerts where people are coming from all over.
Yeah.
You know, because these have all been like local and small communities that have been growing. So I think there is still some uncertainty, like you said, about who's going to come back. And we had to change up what we're doing a lot because we don't work with a drummer anymore. We have a drum machine and then the bass and the guitar. And that
Oh,
was
really?
yeah, that's
Oh, I
what
didn't know
some,
that.
if you look at the latest video, and that's why I want to do this live production, is because people, sometimes they'll book the band, they'll be like, oh, there's only two of you. And I'm like, well, it happened, you know, during quarantine, you know, the band got sort of separated in different places when I was finishing up the album. And I wanted to move forward, and I wasn't able to have musicians over to audition or practice. So we got one of these things, busted out. I have an extra one now. And it's just you're able to program your drum
Yeah.
songs in there and pick your style. And I'm able to control that with the rest of the guitar effects. And I started doing it, and it works. I mean, I like one of my
So
favorite.
you were in quarantine and you didn't want to wait around, so you just got a robot drummer instead.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. I couldn't wait. There was no waiting. It just wasn't happening.
That's so funny, man. There's so many people I know who are just like, well, we're gonna wait, 5 years if we have to, and like a month in, you're like, nah,
No,
fuck my drummer. I'm
I heard
gonna get a drum machine.
exactly. And
Oh,
I
that's
didn't know
great,
if
man.
it would work. The first festival we did was called COVID Blues at Coyote Grove. And of course, I was nervous because everyone had seen us. Everyone's like, where's your drummer? And I'm like, there is no drummer. It's the drummer's in your mind. And you just listen, but we did so many live streams, and we would just plug it in and listen to it. And it just became easier because I didn't have to argue or, with the beat because the drum machine was pretty perfect. So we linked up pretty quick. I was like, all right, cool. If I mess up, it's my fault for the most part.
Yeah, right. Right.
I
So
can still blame it on stuff. I can still blame mistakes on the machine, though. They don't need to know it's user error every time. But
so you guys did the COVID blues thing. Has anybody I guess I mean this in like a genuine way. Like, has anybody tried to like cancel any of the bands for like playing a show during the height of all that?
I didn't hear
The
any
drama.
myself personally. No one really tried to cancel us. I didn't get that much drama. I know that some bands did cancel club gigs, though. I tried to do club shows early on, and a lot of bands were like, no, I'm not going to do a club show. It was early on when it first happened. I was doing an album release, and it was because I think they shut everything down St. Patrick's Day, and it
Right
might have
around
been,
then,
right after the first couple week orders where they were letting things open up. I was reaching out to bars and clubs that were still open and that didn't want to close, and a lot of bands that I knew didn't want to do it, but when the festival that were outdoors and you had lots of groups, some bands started coming out. So I think everyone was really sensitive to it, and I was a little more, I had a lot of different ideas. There was a protest concert that happened at the amphitheaters in Warren and out in Austin town where people wanted, local bands wanted to be able to play at the open air amphitheaters, because they're like, it's not fair. We can't do anything, even socially distanced, which was an idea that I came about really early on and was talking to some of my musician friends about, like, like we should make some noise and see what happens. And
Yeah.
I think the reason it might have worked is because a lot of the bands sort of waited and followed the rules and didn't make too much of you know what I mean? It wasn't.
Yeah, there's different ways of going about it. I feel like the DIY scene that I kind of it's kind of adjacent to indie rock. There's no way you could like do something like that and be excited about it. You could do it and be apologetic about the fact that you're doing it, and I think you could pull it off. But What's so interesting to me is I heard about the COVID blues thing.
Mhm.
I don't know, after like a week after it happened, and it just seems like all this stuff, A, has flown under the radar, but B, has gotten people to come out to it. So I don't know. I'm just really fascinated by it, and I think whoever watches this, I don't think a lot of people know it even happened. And so like keep hearing people say like, when is the music industry going to come back? Well, the big music industry, like the Foo Fighters and stuff, that's
Right.
going to be a long time. And there's going to be people who like that kind of stuff who are going to want to, next summer, I don't even know if they're going to be doing big touring concerts. And if they're not, I think a lot of those people who've wanted to see that, maybe they'll start going to stuff that you're doing. Like there's no reason that some of those big concert goers couldn't go to something more underground.
Right. They really can. I mean, it's really starting to help. I mean, the clubs need the help. Everybody's got a cap in Ohio at like 15%, which is so low. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
people, there's just going to be a lot of options, and it's, I think that if people want to see it happen, they need to support the options. I know that bars in Ohio are allowed to serve until 10 o'clock and close at 11. So, there's people making music, you know what I mean, as long as they're following the rules.
Right.
So like the venue caps and the entertainment caps, as long as people are, I think, operating that way, it should be fine. People seem to be working all right. And like I said, I haven't
Yeah.
heard about sickness and like the communities that people have, put together to try and stay
And
together.
who knows if people got sick or not, but I know exactly what you're saying. Like you would, that's the thing I keep going back to with this. Like if you would just know more people that got sick if it was really widespread from one of these shows. Like it just feel like, if there are really hundreds of people showing up and you knew most of them, you'd probably know at least 12 people or something that like got sick if it was done
Right.
wrong. So that's
No,
got that
people are,
has to be a
you
good
know,
sign.
I always wondered, I was like, during the weekends, I was like, where do you want to be? Fresh air, outdoors, it seemed like the best sort of option, if you weren't going to be, because I know a lot of people just weren't able to sit indoors all summer. Some people didn't have the option, they have to travel or they have to work, and I know a lot of people can't just be, quarantined to one space. So I felt like, if you're going to be somewhere, it might as well be fresh air. Uh,
And it seems like, most everybody just kind of wears a mask even if they don't want to now, just to kind of get
right,
on with it. And as long as you're not like, especially outside, as long as you're not like just like spitting on people when you talk or whatever, it just seems like
right.
fairly low. I don't know. Don't quote me, but that's my take.
Fair
So
enough. Yeah, no, I don't get too
yeah,
much into it. I just focus on the music and people having a good time and
yeah,
getting
for sure.
out there.
For
And it
sure, that's
seems
a good
yeah,
mindset for like how much the other stuff has become a part of music world and just like culture in general. When you're there in the moment, not to get too bent out of shape about it, because like you committed to be there, you might as well just play well, have fun.
no, that's the truth. I mean, and plus it has been a lot of fun because a lot of us got to see each other, and that's a good time, And like you said, when there's no music business happening, people at least need to come together, and keep stuff running, keep it moving. So I'm definitely excited to see, what happens next year because I'm thinking more festivals that are allowed to do music will do it, and I'm hoping, like you said, the scene of people that was able to, keep it alive for this year, will grow. More people will come out and get
You guys
interested.
have the infrastructure in place to like make a big leap with this stuff. It's been really cool to just even learn about all this again, because like the music industry is. When was the last time the industry didn't have a good year? Like it's been
Right,
the concert industry, I should say, which is a little bit different. I feel like that's music
right.
plus entertainment. But yeah, you guys definitely can kind of next year I'm sure will be even better with all this stuff. Um,
Yeah,
I
definitely for 2020.
Yeah.
Until,
I wanted to I'm going to do this write up mainly on trash, just as like a single write up kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to finish up just by like talking about that song in particular.
nice.
And I I I'm glad you said the proto punk thing, because that makes a lot of sense as far as like if you had to kind of classify it with a genre, what it would be. But my take on it was this: like, there's a lot of people I hear who try to make this kind of music and have been a lot of bands have been making this kind of music in my world for a long time and like doing the indie rock thing. influenced by like 60s, you know, Stooges, Velvet Underground, whatever it happens to be. And it almost seems like there's been so much of that for so long. There's this weird fatigue when you listen to it where it's just like, yeah, okay, this is, I'm so used to this by now. There is something about the way you guys do the song that's so different, and it has to be from like the scene you come from. Like there's just a totally different approach to it. It's super super loose. Like the tones, the a lot of the recording choices are just really different. A lot of the proto punk stuff nowadays, especially, sounds like there's a lot of money involved when you listen to it. Like, wow, that's a really nice drum sound. Like they must have, spent, 4 days at a studio and 10 grand to be able to get that drum sound. Where I feel like the spirit of this music has been about, I mean, I don't know, pun intended, man. It's supposed to be trashy, and it almost seems like I'm sure to some extent, like if you're home recording, you're working with like limited means, but it almost seems more like a mindset, like working with a limited mindset. So, I mean, that's kind of my take on it. Like, I think there's just so much to it that's just genuinely exciting and new sounding, like a totally different take. Like that fuzz guitar throughout it is like. So tell me about that. Like, just tell me about the recording in general. But I'm curious how you got that sound and like all those choices.
So what ended up happening was I'm writing songs for the new album, and I like to have new songs, when I do an album. So that one came up. I came up with the lyrics. That was like an overnight write, where you have a night out and you're looking for lyrics and you're thinking about it. Oops. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
So I wrote that song up, and like I came up with the riff, which was, like you said, it was like a standard rock and roll proto punk style riff. But it was more about the vibe, I guess, and I put I go into the studio and I lay it down with just the guitar and the vocals, and, I show it to my friend. I'm like, what do you think of these lyrics? And then people seem to like it. They thought it was funny. It was kind of campy. It was sort of edgy.
It's so campy. And I gotta talk about the lyrics too. It's that perfect blend of like, it's funny, but it's not stupid. I mean, it's campy, but it's also serious, and
right.
and something that's really difficult to get across. So like a lot of the indie rock stuff that I've been seeing for years now, there's this thing that a lot of the lyricists do where you're just kind of singing about like a feeling, like the lyrics are kind of like poetic, and it's just like trying to talk about some feeling that you don't know how it feels. You're like chasing a feeling or whatever, and the lyrics are kind of just like, esoteric. This is like tongue in cheek, to the max. But what's cool about it is that like it's the trash song. Like a lot of music I hear, even if it's really good in this kind of proto punk thing, you don't know what type of song it is, and if you can have just one thing stick, I think that's really talented songwriting, to just be like, yeah, it's the trash song,
right.
Who cares? Like, and yeah.
And yeah, I dropped it. I had the drummer come in and I recorded it. I mic'd it up. And I wanted to add something sort of heavy to it. And I don't know if it was like, some Velvet Underground I was listening to or something. I wanted that fuzz sound in it. I had this fuzz pedal. And I was like, this is like, it just sounded really trashy, right? It was a very trashy sounding pedal.
That's exactly it too,
I wanted one, for a long time. It's like you look for fuzz pedals and you collect them. And I plugged this one and I thought it was going to be great. And it just sounded like trash. And I was like, I'm going to use it on the song. I was like, because it sounds terrible. And I plugged it in and I put it all over the track. We did the whole entire song. We laid the bass down. I was like, this is the bass sound I want. I was like, it needs this like 1970s Lou Reed fretless bass. I was like, in a lot of trashy drums, that are like, laid on the bottom. I was like, and I'll just drop the guitar in there, and I mix it up. And I dropped that fuzz solo over the entire song, and it was so trashy and everyone hated it. They were like, you got to cut the fuzz guitar out because it's terrible. And it ruins the vibe of the song.
I wouldn't have said that, just for the record.
Well, because it was all over the track also. It was like I played the fuzz guitar all over the track.
More than the finished product?
Oh, yeah. It was all over the track. I was like, it sounded like absolute garbage. I ruined it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really artsy. I was like, no one's going to listen to this one. I might as well just trash it up. And everyone, you know, even with the lyrics, you know, with the lyrical content, everyone's like, it can't be too aggressive. And with the guitar, you know, they're like, it's got to have a vibe and it's got to be fun, you know, and they're like, you can't trash it up that much. So I wanted to keep the guitar in there. So I just cut it into those snippets that you hear. I took the one guitar solo and I just sort of added it into, like, you know, where it is in the chorus, you know, into the arrangement.
Yeah.
And was not sure if it came across, because everyone, I was like, all right, I compromised. I was like, I cut out like a third, all the bad parts. I was like, I just left in the best of the fuzz, you know, so there's a sprinkling of trashy fuzz. And everyone was like, I don't know. I might have liked it before there was a fuzz in it, you know, and I thought it was dry. And I took my friends out. We went on a drive. I was like, I want you guys to listen to this music. So I had a carload of people, and I turn up the song real loud, and people are listening. And someone's like, yeah, I like it. Like, the guitar sounds good. Someone's like, are you going to have like the saxophone player play live, or who played the saxophone part? And I was
Yeah,
like,
dude,
no, that's
yeah.
like a fuzz guitar. And so that's when I knew that it was going to come off, you know, with that like New York punk, which
Right.
maybe I was going for, you know, like that sort of trashy CBGB, like black and white, hanging out in New York, you know, Lou Reed, Ramones, like type of punk vibe. And I think I had a lot of people that liked the song, and they're like, you got to keep it really listenable. So I think it sort of balanced out in the end. And yeah, having that
I know
trash.
exactly what you're saying. I've had that happen so many times where people think fuzz guitar is saxophone. It does kind of just show that like a lot of those tones are interchangeable, and kind of all, there's like a reason that that whole scene worked for the way that those bands were. And that's so cool to hear that there was an actual intent, like a thematic intent to using a trashy sounding guitar. Because like,
Right.
again, if this was coming from a band who had like 50 grand to make this song or whatever, I feel like someone would be influenced to use some kind of, this is the best pedal, you know, this is the best
Right.
fuzz pedal on the market or whatever. And it wouldn't be as cool. There's just no way. There's no way it would be as cool as this song turned out.
Right.
I
Yeah.
also want,
Character.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I also wanted to talk about the video too. I want to know where you shot that, and it seems like it just perfectly fits the song again too. Like, it just seems like I don't know. My whole take is it just kind of seemed like, and you know, you're saying that Warren isn't necessarily, well, was it shot in Warren?
Yeah, we shot it in my hometown, which is just right outside of Warren. But yeah, it's
Gotcha.
Warren. Yeah, Warren Township, sort of the edge, the suburbs.
I mean, it
Warren.
just kind of I hope you take this the right way, but it kind of just has almost like a rural like white trash party vibe to it, and
Right?
like the Adidas tracksuit. Like I don't know, everything was just kind of perfect about how you did that. Like I feel like it just seemed like the coolest thing that's come out of the jam scene that I've seen recently. Because I've heard a lot of people talk about in that scene how they want to go more indie rock and do more stuff like that. And it seems like there's this bridge with what you're doing. Like, you know, there are elements where it seems like, yeah, this is totally out of the jam scene. You can totally tell. Then there's stuff where it's like, why aren't bands in our scene this cool? Like, why aren't they doing stuff like this? It almost had like a hip hop vibe too. Like, you know.
Right. That was the funny part. So I guess what happened, my sister does photography and she does film work, and she was in town. She had a camera, and it was like, let's shoot a music video. And I don't think the song was written when we filmed the video, which is what's
Really?
funny. Yeah, I don't know what we were going to use it for. We were just taking B-roll shots, and it was like, what do you do? And then she's like, I got like $30 worth of smoke bombs from the gas station. And it's like, we're going to go down to the park. You know, what do you do when you're 16 and you're hanging out in town? It's like, you go to the park and you like light fireworks, or you like drink Red Bulls, you know, smoke on the swings. And it's like, what do you know, that's sort of,
it made me want to relive that kind of stuff. Yeah, totally.
and then there's actually, some of it was filmed up at the local spot by our house, like the quarry up in Garrettsville. We were working up there, and we were filming up there too. So I think some of the shots we got while we were camping and hanging out. But that was just it was just like a documentary of what you would do during the summer. And the tracksuit was funny, and the Chihuahua that I had in the
right.
dog. And I did sort of have that vibe. So it was like, what do we do? And I was like, well, make it like it's gonna be again, you know, I'm just gonna do the like the hip hop thing with the tracksuit, and I'll look fresh, and I don't know, we'll throw, you know, fireworks around or whatever. And it was sort of supposed to be that way, because I always thought it was funny that people would, do music videos like that. And I'll watch a lot of them and I'd be like, well, they're just like hanging out in the parking lot, but they look fresh. I don't know. I didn't, I was trying to get inspiration for videos, and a lot of hip hop music videos, I think, have a more independent look and feel to them. So I was watching a lot of them like, well, what are they doing? And I'm like, well, it seems like they're hanging out and they're filming, what they're doing, in their neighborhood. Or so it did sort of have that vibe. And I think when the song came out, my sister who had the video paired them up, and I think it worked good.
Yeah,
I
that's so
I
cool.
like driving shots are my favorite ones where you have
Yeah.
the highway, because I always thought that would look good in a video because we were all over the place trying to play shows.
There's three kinds of videos. There's like a plot video, I feel like Hoobastank or something, like they do that kind of stuff, like those kind of bands, like they're, it's like a movie. There's like a short movie, and then there's like practical effect music videos where you're watching something really cool that you couldn't do, or there's the White Stripes video, Fell in Love with a Girl, where it's all Legos and it's
Oh
stop
yeah,
motion Legos, like that's
yeah,
like a practical effect video. And then there's like this kind of video, which is my favorite kind of video, because if you can just look cool, then your band is cool. Like if you can just look cool on film doing basically nothing or just hanging out, that I think that just, that's so much cooler than trying to do something really like interesting over the top or whatever. So yeah, and to hear that it wasn't even intended to be like made for that song when it was being shot is even better. It's like even more
we were
candid.
trying to look cool. We were like, try and look cool on three. Me. Hold on a second. Yeah, I don't know. And then we were riding the scooters around. Yeah, it did have a feel to it, because I was like, that was sort of the feel of the record, because I always feel like art and artists, I feel like there's a difference in when you're making or producing art, and like you said, having enough money and resources and talent to do whatever you want, and having the money and resources and talent to, and then making something out of what you have that's
Right.
still listenable or watchable, And I think about that, even with people who are painters or musicians throughout history, it's like, even if, Michelangelo or a great painter, like only had access to one medium, would he still be a great artist, And I know that getting a lot of medium like video and audio and having people help helps you reach more people. But in a lot of ways, at the current time, you look at what you have and you're like, all right, I need to create art within the context, that I'm in right now, without reaching for something, if that makes sense, or
Yeah,
trying to
totally.
do everything.
Totally. I think
I'll turn
I,
out.
I think nowadays too, I don't know, I can just see this decade, like people being more resourceful and just, you know, needing to have limitations on what they're doing. I think that's just going to be the way forward in general. So, um, well, is there anything else you wanted to add? That was pretty much what I wanted to get at. But yeah, I'm excited to hear all this about. I'm excited to learn all this about the track. There's a lot more there than I even hoped, and that everything you said about how all that was made was what I had in the back of my mind. Like I bet it was probably like this, like actually just I'm gonna do like a trashy sounding guitar here, that kind of stuff. So it's cool to hear all those stories. But is there anything you kind of want to add to finish this up?
That was about it. I think we covered all the fun stuff. I mean, we covered the festivals and we covered the live stuff. Yeah, that's what happened. I think I let you know we're going to be doing producing that song and a couple other songs off the new album in a live production.
Yeah.
We're going to set up the stage and the lights, and we're going to set it up like it's a live concert. But we're just going to film it, and we're going to record it, and we're going to edit it. So we're going to have, keep moving forward with the vibe, and I'm excited because stuff comes together.
Yeah,
So,
for sure, man.
I don't know. I guess that's the quote or whatever. You never know. Just keep trucking because it comes together.
We'll leave it off here. I'm not sure. Actually, let me know what you think. I'm not sure if I want to like cut this down into like a shorter version, maybe with like a little bit of like music behind it, or if you think that your people would like be more interested in watching like a full interview like this in its entirety. So like think about it and
Right.
let me know how you'd want it to come out. But this will be like at the end of the article,
Nice.
along with what I've written so far.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know what you think the attention span is on people that. I'm gonna go out and light a cigarette if we're done officially.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what you think the attention span is on people officially.